been a very disappointing sequel to the 2019 film. And we thought it would be an entertaining conversation if we talked about some of the most disappointing sequels ever made. And Ricky Flex, before we get into the draft, you flip the coin, we pick where we're going to pick in this draft, right? We select where we're going to pick. We have to define what like disappointing means. And this is not worst sequels draft. Like for me, when I say most disappointing, I'm not talking about like, for example, Caddyshack 2. I'm not talking about Caddyshack 2. I'm not talking about really any of the Jaws sequels personally. I'm thinking about movies that, for the most part, I lived like when they came out, and there's a lot of hype to them, and a lot of people are going out to the theaters, and or at least there's an anticipated large audience that is going to go see this movie opening weekend, and then it's not what you expect. It doesn't reach the qualities of the first film. It doesn't perform as well, and it ages poorly. That's what I'm talking about with disappointing. Not necessarily just like, is this the worst movie ever made? It's more about this was such a letdown.
I'm in the same boat. I tried to do only movies that came out during my lifetime, because like there are like movies where I was so disappointed, and before like the era of like Rotten Tomatoes, where I watched the first one or even the second one, and then or I watched the first one, I'm like, oh, I'm excited for the second one, or I watched the first two, I'm excited for the third one, and the third one or the second one, whatever the sequel is horrendous, and I had no idea it was going to be horrendous. There are some in my back pocket I might go back to like that, but for the most part, I'm trying not to do that, because I'm with you. This is disappointment, and some of the movies I might pick might be fine. Like some people might like have a gripe with them, but personally, I think they're a huge disappointment for myself. So I'm gonna do like a big balancing act here between the disappointments here. And some people, I already know, like there's gonna be controversy on this draft. I also want to say I did not know we were drafting, but I'm always down for a draft. I want to know how much overlap we're gonna have, because obviously the superhero ones, I think we're gonna have a lot of overlap, but outside of superhero is gonna be really interesting. And I think it poses a question: how many superhero movies are you allowed to pick?
Wow. So if I'm looking at my top 10, because my big board has in total over 20 movies. We've been disappointed a lot in our lifetime. Okay. But I would say in my top 10, I have, I think, 5 superhero movies. So if you want to say like you can only pick 3 superhero movies, I think that would be okay. I think there should be a cap to it. What do you think about that rule?
What do you think? 2?
You want to keep it to 2?
You can't do more than 3.
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't gonna. I said 3 to start. So if you want to
Oh,
do
okay,
2,
I missed that.
I think we could easily. Yeah, let's do 2. But like, maybe 2, and you have an option for like a wild card if you want. If you have a really good one, like because like there's like a couple where they're really juicy, where it's like this is not a bad movie, but it has not aged well, or at least maybe it's aging better now that it's been a certain amount of time. There is one that I have that is so controversial, and I want a chance to talk about it in draft form, whether you pick it or I pick it. So I don't want to get like hamstrung and not be able to talk about this movie. So we could have a regular draft. I think maybe we do 2 and a wild card, so you have an option for a third.
Okay, so 2, and then basically 3, a max of 3 superhero movies.
So it's 3. It's 3. But like we want to diversify the boards here. It's so easy to pick superhero movies from the last 10 years because of the downward spiral Marvel finds itself in on the big screen. And then you have DC going on with the Snyderverse and the rebooting. And then here comes the DC Studios and DC Universe from James Gunn. But then there's so many other IP projects, legacy sequels. I was making this list and I kept thinking like, wow, it's really impressive what Top Gun Maverick did, because not many legacy sequels make it. Not many make it, and we're going to see it in this draft. I would say when there is a legacy sequel coming out, more often than not, it's going to disappoint you, and it's not going to be a quality project. And characters that are returning to play their roles aren't going to be able to conjure up the magic they had the first time they were seen on screen. Right? It's all about nostalgia nowadays, but I think this is going to be really transparent with how often these don't work.
Yeah, I for the most part didn't put any legacy sequels on my list, because for the most part, like you said, we know they're not going to be good, or we know like, hey, they might be serviceable, but like there's no way they'll be like Top Gun Maverick good. So I don't really have a lot of legacy sequels in my big board on my big board.
I have a couple.
But yeah, but I would say my last thing before we get going here is I don't think there's a clear 1-1.
There's not, dude. You're talking about making a list. Impossible. You can't. We wouldn't be able to come to a, like you talked about. There was going to be a lack of overlap. I think. I think in terms of our niche picks, where it's like they both disappointed us. We talk about movies so much, even prior to this podcast, that like we're going to have the same type of concepts and ideas. But I think it would have been impossible for us to come to a consensus on a top 10.
Yeah. Okay. I got my coin. Here's heads. YouTube viewers. Dirty. Then clean sides, tails. Here we go.
Tails.
It is tails.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll go first here. Ricky Flex, you have the second pick. This is snake style.
Snake style.
Do we want to continue doing the snake style, or would you rather go back and forth?
I think snake style.
You still want to do that? Okay.
I think it's more fair.
So this is the 1-1 pick where it's definitely high up on both of our big boards, and it's going to be franchise, of course, and it's going to be something that's come out last 10 years. I don't want to be any more specific than that. And this is a franchise where I think this movie really marked a turning point, and it was a sequel that came out that I think created a rift between the fan base and the studio, and one that is irreparable. And first overall pick is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. Okay, so this is a movie that the Last Jedi, right? It was very divisive, but you could say it got people talking. At least a part of the Star Wars fandom was obsessed with it, loved it. Then another part had a disdain for it. So you had a decision to make in the next movie, right? Do you stick with the path that was set from Rian Johnson, the creativity with the Force, what he was trying to do that was new to the Star Wars universe, or do you respond to the people who dislike the movie and you revert? And that's what they do with The Rise of Skywalker. We bring back J.J. Abrams. We bring in Palpatine, right? We basically cancel the origins of Rey's character and her parentage and her ancestry, and we connect her to Palpatine, okay? You have a lot of like cheap tricks and connections to nostalgia with Star Wars. Lando all of a sudden is in the movie, okay? Lando, he has a daughter now. Finn all of a sudden can conjure up the Force by the end of the movie. All of this seems to be thrown in because of backlash to The Last Jedi. And now it seems like this movie is supposed to be for everybody, but liked by nobody. This movie, I think, forever damaged the relationship between Star Wars fans and Disney. Disney, this is the third movie in their new sequel trilogy that absolutely fails. Absolutely fails. Both the haters of The Last Jedi and the lovers of The Last Jedi can both agree this movie sucked. What's so disappointing about this, Ricky Flex, is that this is one of the last movies where you slap Star Wars on it or you slap like big name franchise on it, people will go see it. Last Jedi makes $1 billion. The Rise of Skywalker made $1 billion, but it was like one of the saddest $1 billion movies ever made. You know, it was just depressing as hell because you didn't know who was going to show up. It was in the age of the phase 3 of the MCU, or the last stage of 2019. To me, this Star Wars is probably top 2 biggest franchises of all time for movies. You could argue it is the biggest franchise, and I think this is their most disappointing sequel. So I'm going to put that on the number 1 pick.
Okay. I agree with everything you said. It deserves to be drafted for sure. But here's my question, because I think this is where the disappointment meaning takes on different levels. For me, after The Last Jedi, they lost my trust. Yeah. So going into Rise of Skywalker, I didn't know what was going to happen. And when I left it and I didn't like the movie, I wasn't totally surprised. For Last Jedi, they lost my trust. And walking out of that theater, I was like, oh my God, after Force Awakens, which a movie I really like, it's like, what happened? So for me, Last Jedi is more disappointing in that facet. And that's kind of how I approached making my big board.
Okay, so for me, I would say The Last Jedi was like, that was where you officially cut ties, because you can't just say one bad movie, like one that didn't just appeal to what you liked, and then you're out entirely, because it's Star Wars. Like you had been in for 6 movies. You don't love Attack of the Clones, do you? Were you out back then? Well, when Phantom Menace came out, were you out back then? Like Last Jedi doesn't do what you like. You didn't want to see the next one. I think it's the Rise of Skywalker where people were like, whether you liked or disliked the Last Jedi, you looked at that movie and said like, these people don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to provide fan service and they just care about dollars and cents. I think that was the movie. That's what made it so disappointing, right? And we talked about it's not really the monetary thing, but I think that's the one that just did irreparable damage for the basically the majority of Star Wars fans.
Yeah, that like you said, put the nail in the coffin. Where it's like, is this a money grab or do they know what they're doing? That was like for sure we don't know. Last Jedi was like, oh, they're testing ideas. Like we didn't know at the time. Like we thought like, oh, they're creating this new trilogy, and we still had hope that maybe the third one could munder up something and make it like a coherent trilogy. But Rise of Skywalker, nail in the coffin, bolt it up, put it in the ground, over.
Yeah. Did you say munger up? What'd you say?
Did I say that? But yeah, munger up,
muster up. I think you meant conjure, but you said, I knew what you meant. You know, I do. Sometimes we make up words here, but we know exactly where we're going. We know exactly where we're going. Okay, that's my number one pick, Ricky Flex. Where did you have it? Like, if you ranked it, did you have it like at 10? Did you have it at 6? Where'd you have it?
So I didn't know we were drafting. I didn't like put an order or even a tiers. But for me, it would be like I wouldn't have picked it this early because again, I said Last Jedi because I going into my disappointment. If I saw the movie in a theater, I kind of like went to like when I was walking out of the theater, was I disappointed? And I think I was more disappointed walking out of Last Jedi than I was for Rise of Skywalker. That's why I had Last Jedi ahead of Rise of Skywalker on my list. I'm not picking that next, but that's again different ways to look at the draft.
It was the most empty. I felt like the Rise of Skywalker. I liked it more than you, and I remember leaving the theater saying like there's some really cool moments in that movie, and you and our dad were just on the opposite side of the spectrum. You know, after that was like a literal divide that we literally exemplified leaving the theater. Like we literally showed it. You know, and like the next movie, it's like. Okay, they just threw everything out the window. Like none of this matters now. That's why it's just so crushing. But yeah, your pick.
Okay. All right. Gosh. All right, I'm gonna go personal pick here. Childhood pick. I was 10 years old seeing this movie, and I'm picking it now because I'm afraid you're gonna pick it on the turn. I'm picking Spider-Man 3.
Bro, I had this in the 1 slot. I didn't have the balls to take it. I didn't have it.
Dude, you're telling me they bring it. We have Spider-Man. You know, we have Green Goblin. Again, I'm not going to even go like right now. I'm thinking like when I was, back when I saw Spider-Man when I was 4 or 5. One of the first movies I've seen in theaters. I'm buzzing. Spider-Man was my favorite superhero then. I'm absolutely buzzing leaving that theater. And then Spider-Man 2, hey, what can you say? One of, if not the greatest comic book movie of all time. So for Spider-Man 3, we were on such a hot streak, you know, if you can call it a streak. Back-to-back bangers. Superhero movies are here. At the early 2000s, we finally get consistent superhero movies from Marvel. And with Spider-Man, my favorite superhero. And then you're telling me Spider-Man 3 is going to have freaking Venom in it? You're going to have Venom in it? I'm all in. And then we get Spider-Man 3. Topher Grace, the great guy, bad Eddie Brock, bad Venom. And the whole movie, we don't need to break down the movie. I think it ended that trilogy. Tobey Maguire needed to take time away. That was bad. Sam Raimi, obviously a big horror guy, big in the news this week. Back at MCU for sure with Doctor Strange. Bad end to that trilogy. Shocking. From such a good filmmaker, a reliable filmmaker, to allow that to happen, I think was just shocking. So Spider-Man 3 is my first pick.
Like I said, dude, I wanted to take this. What kind of held me back is because I think Spider-Man 3 is actually not aging poorly compared to a lot of these projects. But if you travel back to 2007, They're making movies with the Fantastic Four. They're making movies with Ghost Rider. They're making X-Men movies, right? Daredevil's had a movie, but there's one king of the superhero back in 2007. We are at the dawn of the birth of the MCU with Iron Man. The Dark Knight is not coming out till '08. Batman doesn't even control like the box office in terms of superhero movies. It was all Spider-Man. If you go back to that time period, you're 10, I'm 12, the hype for Spider-Man was insane. Insane. It would, if social media was around back then, it would have dominated conversation, Ricky Flex. And the thing about that initial trilogy, it had such awesome villains. It had the best collection of the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery. You mentioned Green Goblin. We just had Doc Ock. You're telling me we're bringing in Venom? Venom? We're bringing in Gwen Stacy? Sandman's going to be in this movie? Hype was at an all-time high. And we're bringing in the symbiote. We're bringing in the black suit Spider-Man. The trailer of Peter Parker scaling the glass building, and then you see like the iconic him turning his hand, looking at himself. Dude, the hype was unbelievable. But even when I was 12 years old, I left the theater saying, wow, that was not as good as Spider-Man 2. Wow, that didn't live up to even Spider-Man 1. And there was forward momentum for Spider-Man. They wanted to make Spider-Man 4. They wanted to make the Vulture in Spider-Man 4 with Sam Raimi. This movie was so disappointing in terms of reception that they didn't go on to make Spider-Man 4, which makes it a good pick in my eyes. Although controversial, this is very interesting when this comes out, what people think about it.
So I tiered my movies based off of, I have a superhero tier. So I have a bunch of superhero movies in that tier, obviously. I have like action tier, a bunch of action movies. I have iconic / important to Hollywood sequels that were disappointing. I also have franchise enders.
Yeah.
This would qualify in that category. I alluded to it. You said it. I'm glad you said it. This wasn't supposed to end. It wasn't supposed to be a trilogy. So it's just shocking how bad a movie where it was on such a run. Batman Begins was the previous year, by the way, and still look at Batman now. You wouldn't have believed Batman just got a star on the Walk of Fame. Like you would not believe, no, Spider-Man 3 was like the center of the superhero universe over The Dark Knight next year with Joker. No, it was Spider-Man 3 if we went back in time. So this movie, I think, for me, is as superhero fandom, my most disappointing movie so far in my lifetime.
It's not the second worst movie. That's not what we're saying here. It was disappointment in terms of what we were expecting to see and the deflation we felt. That's what we're talking about. That's what you nailed with Spider-Man 3. Your second round pick.
Whew. So I'm going to go superhero again, just in case you were going to pick this. I just want to take this from you in case you were. And it's kind of related to your Rise of Skywalker, where this created a divide. I'm picking Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice.
My number 2.
We don't have to talk about the movie, but expectations going in, Ben Affleck, new Batman, post Man of Steel. Man of Steel at the time, I think, was more liked than disliked. I think now it's like kind of aging interestingly. I don't think it's aging as well as I think there was a lot of Cavill stands, but now a couple years post Justice League, Snyder Cut, I think they've quieted down and it's not aging as well anymore. But we get a Lex Luthor, and it's Jesse Eisenberg coming off of The Social Network. Oscar should have won an Oscar just 2 years earlier or 3 years earlier. Gal Gadot, however you want to say it. Wonder Woman coming into the frame. Doomsday. A lot of hype. Batman versus Superman on the big screen, live action, not animated, live action, and it's freaking Henry Cavill, who just positioned himself as a formidable Superman, versus Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's Batman. First time we're going to see him on the big screen. Let's go. And no, we didn't. We did not go. Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice.
This was my number 2. Like if this got back to me for the number 4 pick, this was going to be selected. There was so much riding on this movie. This was coming out 2016. This is 2 years before Infinity War. It's a year after the second Avengers movie has released. DC is forming their universe, something to compete with the biggest thing happening in movies. And we had Man of Steel in 2013. It was all right. It did pretty well at the box office, but everyone was like, okay, what's the next step, right? In this world of creating superhero universes, not only are we going to have Henry Cavill returning, we're going to introduce you to Batman. We're going to show you what Ben Affleck is like, a controversial casting at the time that we wanted to work so badly, right? At least like true fans really wanted to see Ben Affleck shine as Batman. He does pretty well in the movie. But not only that, you're going to tease what the Justice League is going to look like. You're going to cast the Justice League in Dawn of Justice. You're going to give us Lex Luthor. You're going to give us Doomsday. You were trying to kickstart a universe with one movie, right? And everyone knew how ambitious it was, but it then turned out to be a mess. It was overstuffed, right? It gave some controversial takes on some iconic comic book characters that people did not love. Looking at Lex Luthor, I'm looking at Batman specifically. So just to think about what it was trying to do, how short it came, and those expectations there. I think this is a good pick. You know, it just was so, and I don't think it's aged well at all, especially with the upcoming reboot and the amount of Batmans we've gotten since then. We're getting a new Superman now. It's like everyone wants to forget that even existed.
Yeah, and this was supposed to be a franchise starter. This was the second movie in the Zack Snyder's DCU or whatever, DC universe, and this was the beginning of the end.
DOA. The DCEU after this movie, it was DOA. It was nuts.
Yeah. So, you know, and obviously something I quote all the time, the Martha just absolute, like in the theater, like one of those moments you go, oh, I cringe like out loud. Just terrible. So Batman vs. Superman, my second pick.
And especially if like Superman bangs next year, like it's gonna be a movie that will further live in infamy. Will further live in infamy. And if the Batman's already looking like it is a success for DC, the Batman Part 2 is coming up, Brave and the Bold is coming. If those just blow the Batman we saw in Batman vs. Superman and Justice League out of the water, it's just gonna further, right, separate how bad Batman vs. Superman was and how sad that movie it was. Like it never came together. Just try to do too much. Good pick. All right. I need some star power on my board. And that's why I'm going Godfather Part 3 for my second round pick. So this movie, you have to qualify what is a disappointment. This is the one that I was not alive for. And it'll be the only one I wasn't alive for that I will pick. Okay. Because that to me tells how disappointing that movie is. It's so historically disappointing. It's passed on to generations where you have the first two that are must watch. Everyone says you got to see on a bucket list movies you have to see. Godfather Part 2. No one says Godfather Part 3. Nobody. It's a part of a trilogy and people try and forget it. And the grandparents tell their kids, don't watch it. Those parents tell their kids, don't watch it. Don't bother with it, you know? And it doesn't have the juice. Nominated for 7 Academy Awards. How much is that just because it is the Godfather trilogy? Okay. How much is it because of that? All right. Not many characters returning there. A bit of a slog. And that's like coming from like Godfather 1 and 2. The performances don't hit the same either. This is the definition of a disappointment. It's a legacy disappointment, like sequel. So I'm putting that on my board.
I'll never forget the first time I turned on Godfather Part 3 by myself in the basement of our house. And I was super young, like way under the age, but I've seen the first two Godfathers, of course. And I was like, oh my God, Godfather Part 3. Like, I can't wait to see this. Like, I remember like turning it on and just throughout the entire movie, just scratching my head at like what I was watching. And I knew right then and there, I'm like, this movie, like, it was like right when I was like starting to develop like movie takes. And I'm like, this movie's not good. And it's like kind of tough to say because like, but this is the Godfather, right? Like, am I allowed to say this movie's not good? And then just like, lo and behold, yeah, everyone else thinks this movie sucks. You know?
Yeah.
This movie's awful. So I agree with you. This was on my board. This is what do you call it? What was it? Iconic / important to Hollywood tier for me. Just only 7 Oscars nominations, only for name brand Francis Ford Coppola. You know, just respect factor. No other reason. The Godfather Part 3. Disappointment.
It's just not entertaining to watch, and the acting's not good, and it just doesn't have the ensemble. I watched it again this past Thanksgiving. That's when everyone watches The Godfather. It's Thanksgiving time, We're at our cousin's house. I was in my cousin's room and I was sleeping and I just was watching. I'm like, damn, like it's just not hitting. I'm getting older. I'm maturing. My movie taste, I think, is getting a little bit better. And it's nowhere close. It's nowhere close to the previous two movies. So I think we had was that the one on your, so that was on your list. Do you have like more to tease that you're potentially going to pick that you weren't alive for?
Ooh, I'm just going down my list. There are a couple that I want to say in honorable mentions, but I will not draft. Just because I don't know at the time if anyone thought they were going to be good.
Okay, gotcha.
There's one I might draft. There's one.
Okay. Well, hold on that, Ricky Flex, because I'm still up. And with my next pick, this is where I don't know. It could go anywhere right now. It's exciting, and I can't wait to hear what your picks are going to be. And I'm sure we have some overlap, but I'm going with Matrix Resurrections as my next pick. This is a movie I debated like whether I want to draft it or not, mainly because like this didn't get a theatrical release when it was supposed to, right? I think this was a COVID release. It was in tandem with Max, right? HBO Max it was back then. Is that true, Ricky Flex? 2021?
Yes.
Okay. So this didn't get the theater treatment. It was obviously a victim of our surroundings, of COVID and everything. But for this one, the other two like Matrix sequels could have been drafted. This is kind of similar to like Star Wars, where you could draft other Star Wars movies, right? You can do like the Attack of the Clones, you can do Phantom Menace, right? Not to tease picks, but to tease picks. Here, you had Reloaded and Revolutions that don't really hit with the audience, especially Revolutions. But you're looking 20 years later, and you look at the rebuilding of Keanu Reeves' career. He is the epicenter of action films as John Wick, and now he has garnered nearly just as much juice he had in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and he's returning to play Neo in Matrix Resurrections. Like, holy crap, dude. Like, this is going to be sick. The Wachowskis are returning. Imagine what like this movie will look like in 2021 compared to what it looked like in 2003. This is going to be off the chain, unbelievable hype and anticipation for this movie, Ricky Flex. And then we get the film, and this is where the disappointment sets in. It becomes kind of an agenda that we see for the Wachowskis. They're using the Matrix and them criticizing like IP and franchise building, sequels. They make fun of itself and what Hollywood is now, right? It seems like a very Wachowski thing to do. But when you think about all the people that have waited for a worthwhile Matrix sequel and Keanu to have the ability to make that movie again, incredibly disappointing, right? The first Matrix hit so hard for so many people, one of the best movies ever made. And then you decided to have all this money invested in it by Warner Brothers, and you give us basically why this movie shouldn't have been made in the first place. Like, that is insane to me. I think worthy of being on the big board here.
So this was on my big board, and I like how you picked it over Reloaded and Revolutions. I like how you picked Resurrections. As again, legacy sequels, we said off the top, our expectations are usually lower, right? But the trailer that came out with this, Keanu on an absolute heater with John Wick, Yahya Abdul-Mateen was on an absolute heater as well at the time, and he's going to be Lawrence Fishburne's character. My God, I was all in on Matrix Resurrections, and it's just crazy how you could have picked Reloaded or Revolutions, and like if you pitch that, I'll be like, okay, that's fine too. This franchise has only had one like for sure fire good movie, and it's still like legendary.
It carries weight.
Legendary. But for me, I think the more important question is, I had a problem putting this in what tier, because is this a franchise ender? Will there be more Matrix after this, or or is this just big fan IP that will go on despite the disappointments?
I can't see the Wachowskis making another Matrix movie, and if they don't make a Matrix movie, no one makes a Matrix movie, I think.
So it's a franchise ender.
I think it is. And Keanu might be doing more John Wick movies. He's going to be in Ballerina. I don't know if he wants to return to Neo again. He wasn't really even Neo in that movie, in Resurrections.
He wasn't. Yahya was a disappointment. underutilized. The whole thing was underutilized and a disappointment. Great pick. Okay,
Third rounder for you.
third rounder. We're going personal again. We're going Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Oh, I didn't have that. That's good.
Kingsman, and you could say low key a franchise ender. I think it's a franchise ender. There was a prequel afterwards that also sucked. And I don't know if we're allowed to do prequels. I think we're just doing sequels on this. But that could be a freaking. I don't think that could be on like eligible because my expectations were so low for that. But going back to Kingsman: The Golden Circle, dude, Matthew Vaughn, Kingsman, just out of nowhere, absolute hit, huge blockbuster hit, box office hit. Taron Egerton coming onto the scene like not in a superhero role or like a creatively new role, completely new character. And this is not your typical James Bond English spy. Completely spin up on your head, different type of movie, a spy thriller. It's funny. It's so innovative and creative. And then you tell me there's gonna be a sequel. We see the trailers. Pedro Pascal with the lasso, Channing Tatum. We're getting back. We're mixing up with America. We like Colin Firth's coming back after what happened in the first one. We have snow, like ski mountains, interesting locations. I was all in on this franchise. The Kick-Ass, Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass. I was never all in on Kick-Ass. I know that's also superhero technically. I was never all in on that, but I got all in after Kingsman. And then Kingsman Golden Circle happened. Franchise ender. Disappointment. That's my third round pick.
Great pick. Holy shit, Ricky Flex. I did not see this coming. I wish I spent like an hour thinking about my entire list and what my order of my draft would be. And in my 20 plus movies, I didn't write Kingsman. And that's because probably I forgot about Kingsman, honestly. And that's how detrimental this sequel was. We did get a prequel, The King's Man, that did not do well. That further inhibits the ability to actually see the third Kingsman movie coming to the big screen. That first movie was so electric, and it came out, I think, 2015. And the year before, we had Guardians of the Galaxy, and you see how like the music incorporation there to the action scenes, and then you have like this movie coming right after. It was like a moment in Hollywood, right, where these type of action films and like franchise movies were being created, and it felt like a hurricane had hit you, and it felt like you had a blast at the theater. And then the Golden Circle comes, and it's like a few years later, it still has a couple of those sequences. You throw in Elton John, right? And it seems like, okay, we're getting bigger. People actually like want to be a part of this thing now. You know, Taron Egerton becomes a huge star. He's going to be playing Elton John in a goddamn movie. You know, it's nuts. But it seemed like similar to Batman vs Superman. It was kind of like teasing what would happen in the future. And it was Jeff Bridges is here, Halle Berry's here, and Channing Tatum's going to be frozen. Like, who's that?
Julianne Moore.
It's like, but like Channing Tatum, he's going to be in the movie, but not really because we're going to tease him for later on. I'm like, dude, you're getting ahead of yourself right now. We just got to make a second good Kingsman movie, right? And they were overthinking it and thinking of the possibilities before seeing what was right in front of them. This is a great pick, Ricky Flex. I'm looking at the news right now. It's Kingsman 3 is in development and expected to release in mid-2025 to early 2026. I assume it's going to be 2026. Matthew Vaughn, the writer and director of the Kingsman films, confirmed the third installment at New York Comic Con in 2023, October. You know, it's also bad. Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Say it. You just say it then.
This is not going to happen.
He's coming off what, Ricky?
Argyle.
Oh, my God.
Like, can't trust him with a big budget. Obviously, a lot of these actors in Kingsman are on to bigger and better things. I'm predicting this doesn't happen.
Your fourth round here.
All right, I'm going to go another franchise under. 2019 movie, Glass, M. Night Shyamalan. Okay, 2016 Split, McAvoy. We just did Speak No Evil. Love him as an actor, super talented. Puts in a hell of a performance. I think his best role he's ever done. One of the best roles in the past 10 years, or best performances of the past 10 years, I think. Unbelievable performance. Oh God, what's her name now? That's kidding me. Anya Taylor-Joy in that movie. She's good in that movie, but that's before Queen's Gambit. Before she's a big star. Just that movie, thrilling, so much fun, and took the world by storm. McAvoy's playing 23 different people. What the heck? And he only found out 2 weeks before the role. Joaquin was supposed to be in this role, and he took it on and absolutely murdered it. And come to find out at the end, it's actually a sequel to Unbreakable, a movie I recently saw in 2015-16 area before Split, unknowing that Split was a sequel to it. And oh my God, we're going to get Glass, and we're going to get Samuel Jackson's character back from Glass. We're going to get Bruce Willis back. And we're going to have Sarah Paulson kind of put this whole thing together back when Sarah Paulson was also on a heater and getting big time roles. So we're going to put this all together into a coherent trilogy with M. Night. Sign me up. And it was anything but coherent. This movie was a complete flop, quality and box office. And for Unbreakable and Split, two movies I love, Glass happened, and I lost all my faith in M. Night since then. I've been trying to be back to being open to M. Night, one of the most volatile directors there are. But Glass, something that should have been a for sure hit for him, something, again, third movie for him, doesn't have to come up with some sort of crazy ending to kind of save the movie or some crazy twist. No, just keep it simple. Nope, didn't. Incoherent movie, terrible, huge disappointment for me. Glass is my fourth rounder.
Never seen Glass. Not all the way through. I've seen scenes of it, but I get why you're saying it's so disappointing because I saw Split. I love Split, right? I think something that turned me off about Glass, I think it was a January release, and it was getting reviewed very harshly, and it just turned me off. It's before I was seeing every single movie that came out, and I never got a chance to watch it on streaming, or I just chose not to watch it on streaming. But I liked Unbreakable too, and that's M. Night, two of his like more positively received movies, and then having a third that connects them. I think there was some anticipation, there was hype for this movie, and it kind of fell flat in its face. And that's when M. Night, who's such a controversial filmmaker and usually has more misses than hits, this is where people are like, okay, can he deliver? Can he really tie this together? And according to you, and according to a lot of people, he was not able to do so. Hence why it was so disappointing. It's like M. Night, maybe he's not who we want him to be, you know?
This was the one thing though, because like obviously some people love his twist, some people hate him, whatever. But this is like the one thing, like you said, two for sure, Unbreakable and Split, no doubters. Like nobody hates those movies. Maybe they hate the concept of them, but those are good quality movies. And plot wise, structurally, they work. Even with the twists in Breakable, which again, if you haven't seen, highly recommend you see. And Glass, it had all the pieces for just M. Night to say, hey, just write the script. It's gonna come naturally, like it's gonna be fine. And it didn't. It didn't. You thought the floor was higher, and it was so low. My God. So I don't recommend anyone to see Glass, by the way, including yourself, Doctor. But for sure, for me, Glass, a really recent disappointment for me. That's my fourth rounder.
Okay. On to my fourth rounder. I'm going to go back to big IP, and I'm going to go to phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I need Marvel on my board. All right. I don't have them yet. If we're playing by the rules here, this would be my first superhero movie on the board, which is kind of insane. I didn't even like think about the strategy whatsoever, but I'm going to do one that kind of the MCU has never really recovered from, and I don't think it's going to I don't think people thought about the MCU the same and didn't think this is the moment where like, okay, they won't be able to recapture the magic from the phase 3. So I'm going to go Quantumania as an all-time disappointment. This is where there's a vacuum, there's a power vacuum of heroes in the MCU. We're trying to take lesser recognized heroes, elevate them. Here comes Paul Rudd as Ant-Man. And okay, how do we elevate Paul Rudd as Ant-Man? Let's give him the next big bad of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Kang the Conqueror. And we're going to use an actor that we had in Loki. We're going to prop him up here as one variant. He's going to eventually be the big bad of the entire MCU for this multiverse saga. So this movie ends up being a complete failure in terms of visuals. Okay in terms of Jonathan Major's performance, but no other acting stands out whatsoever. People have the image of Corey Stoll as, what was that character's name, Ricky Flex? MODOK ingrained in their nightmares. This is a movie that obviously wasn't good then, but now is aging so poorly because Marvel has pivoted from Kang the Conqueror and Jonathan Majors following his verdict as guilty for his whatever he had going on there. That was a complicated way of saying it. But pivoting from that, so the movie was bad then. It's aging even worse now. Paul Rudd and Ant-Man has not really been talked about since with any like future projects in the MCU. It's not like he was killed off at the end of this movie. They killed the variant of Kang by a bunch of giant ants. It's awful. It's an awful movie. And this is where Marvel afterwards, months, a report came out months after, or no, there was a book that was written. They were it was on the story of the MCU.
Yeah.
They were banking for this movie to catapult the MCU, get them back on track. And it did the opposite. And I think this is the one where it's like, you messed up the big bad in the universe. I don't think we can trust you anymore. It almost has a little bit of Rise of Skywalker-ness to it, where it's like, okay, I get it. We're not in the age of when we're not in the golden era anymore. So that's why I'm picking this one.
Yeah, like this is a great pick. Actually I didn't think of this one. This would have been on my board. I didn't think of this. This is great because similar to what you just was Rise of Skywalker, like I said, was Batman versus Superman. It was that awakening moment for us as an audience saying, maybe the MCU just can't repeatedly hit on every movie. You know?
You can't slap the sticker on the front and expect it to make X amount of money. This was a bomb.
And again, like all the signs were there that this movie wasn't going to be good. If you're like looking at it now. Oh, Paul Rudd, like I love Paul Rudd, but it's not like Ant-Man and Ant-Man 2 were like great, especially not Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man 2. So it's like, all right, you're expecting the third one to be great just because it has Kang in it, post Loki. Like, I don't know. Like MCU has a very volatile history of being good villains and bad villains, you know? So it's like, all right, like, and it's a February release, like, or January release. Something like that. It was either January or February. It's like it had the rest of
it was a confident January. Oh, I know it was February. I was gonna say confident January, but
it's like
Marvel.
Because like Marvel usually puts their money project, their absolute money project, in the May slot, right? And that's where they had Deadpool and Wolverine this year, but then they moved to July just due to some other issues. But that's where Fall Guy came in, and that's why I was like, holy crap, that weekend was such a bad weekend at the box office. Maybe the box office isn't back. But then Deadpool Wolverine happened. It's like, okay, yeah, we're fine. But I digress. Quantum Mania was just like, we saw the signs, but we were like, no, it's going to be fine. And it wasn't fine. And that's where it's like, crap. Like, we are in trouble. And a superhero and an MCU fatigue and everything that catapulted after that in phase 4 of the MCU. And obviously with Jonathan Majors. So this is a great pick. I don't think I would have picked it over my other two superhero, but it would be right there in competition for the next slot.
And the last thing I'll just add here, what made it so disappointing to me is because I thought Jonathan Majors was okay. Like I'm like, okay, I could see him as the big bad. Like this is just a variant of him. Like they can make this work. The credit, like the post-credit tease for the future of the MCU now has aged so terribly, right? With the Council of Kangs. But I like the Ant-Man movies. I like how it was in the small sector of the MCU. And I'm not ashamed to say I enjoyed watching Ant-Man and the Wasp. Was it a perfect movie? No. Did I laugh? Yes. You know, as much as it is MCU humor, I liked it. I thought it was funny. You know, I had a good time. I wanted to see this movie succeed because this is why it disappointed me too. It's like, hey, Paul Rudd, you're making the jump. You're going to be A-list potentially Marvel hero after this. And now we haven't heard from him since, you know, and there's been no reference to him. I don't think he showed up in a post credit and I don't know ever, right? Like since this moment. So that's, I think the biggest disappointment to me is like, you're taking something I liked and you kind of soiled it when you tried to make it bigger.
He could have been, who was Shang-Chi? Was he one of the 4 people? It was Hulk, Bruce Banner. It was
Captain Marvel.
Yeah. Was he a part of that?
I don't think so. He might have been, but I don't think so.
Because of the quantum element, he might have been a part of that.
But Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was 2023, I think. And I think Shang-Chi was 2021.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, you're right still.
Okay, that's my 4th rounder, Ricky Flex. On to your 5th and final pick.
No. You get to pick your 5th and
final. It's my final pick. Oh, my God.
I was nervous I was going to jump the gun and pick. And then you jumped the gun to pass me the pick.
Bro, I don't even know if I want to take another superhero movie. I have another one on here. Oh,
There's
man,
a
I can't.
big superhero movie on the board.
There's a big one, and I don't think if I don't take it, I don't think you're gonna take it because it's connected to one of your movies. I'm debating whether I want it or not. I've one that's like from my heart, and it's someone that's also associated to one of our correspondents on the podcast that I want to pick too. There are so many here, Ricky.
I
God
know.
damn it. I can't go double Star Wars. I will not double dip. Wonder Woman 1984.
There it is.
I did it. Wonder Woman 1984. DC had one good thing. They had one like consistent, like, hey, we have the first Wonder Woman movie. Remember 2016 was supposed to kickstart it all. Batman vs. Superman. You had Suicide Squad. Nothing's going right. 2017 comes, you get the hit you need with Wonder Woman. A little bit simplistic when you think about successful like superhero movies, but Gal Gadot worked in that movie. And all of a sudden, she doesn't work in Wonder Woman 1984. Pedro Pascal seems like right now, and even during the time 1984 came out, he could do no wrong except for Wonder Woman 1984. Chris Pine wasn't even supposed to return. He dies in the first Wonder Woman, right? He could not make that movie work. Also, similar to Matrix Resurrections, this showed up Christmas Day on HBO Max, and I remember the disgust that audiences felt, that our family felt when we watched it on the night of Christmas. This movie was disappointing because I think Gal Gadot has never been the same. She has been reviled by audiences ever since this movie came out, and her career has taken a nosedive because of it. And it's disappointing because you thought this person, like, she might be Wonder Woman for a long time. She was one thing that was good in this like universe of rottenness, and they joined the rot with this movie. And Patty Jenkins also has gone down the tube, her career, like Rogue Squadron. Haven't heard anything from it. She insists it's happening. I don't think it is. But Wonder Woman 1984, it soiled something that was the one last grasp of like success in the DCEU, and it was disappointing to see how much it seemed like it just didn't make sense. How much Kristen Wiig was not meant to be a villain and not ready to be a villain. That movie just sucks, and and we had nothing at the time too. Like there was only stuff coming out on streaming services, and this was a big release that, like they said, this is special. This was a big budget movie we are putting on a streaming service. You don't have to go to the theater. You're gonna watch it with your family at home, and that's what you gave us. It was like, what the am I watching here?
Not only will you be able to watch this on a streaming service because you can't go to a theater to see it, we're gonna give it to you on Christmas Day.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving.
Holy crap! Come on, you get like, oh, the anticipation levels for this movie were insane. I when I put this on my list, I was like, holy crap, this is just what we did with Joker 2. Are we this dumb? Are we so dumb? Like, remember seeing that trailer and then seeing the poster and be like, oh my god, 80s, like the colors, what's the song? How does it feel?
Yeah.
What's it called? Blue
Monday.
Blue Monday. Like, you have
Bangers.
Blue Monday in the trailer. Chris Pine's coming back.
Guardians of the Galaxy 2 type of look to it. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, it's similar to Joker 2. We bought in. And now, 2024, not only does that movie look worse every single day, Wonder Woman has aged poorly. I don't think it's bad, but some people have done a 180 on Wonder Woman.
It hurt the original.
Yes, it was so bad it hurt the original. And people are like, maybe Gal Gadot wasn't that good. And
people wanted the first Wonder Woman movie to work so bad that I don't know if they really dissected it, and they weren't overly critical, because like Gal Gadot in that movie is like ditzy a little bit just because she's so new to the world. It was kind of hard to critique.
It worked.
Everyone was just like, okay, what can she do beyond this movie? And then everybody's like, it felt like it was an exposure.
But like, also think about 2020 or whatever. It's like post John Lennon music video, which she was like kind of at the center of.
Oh my god, imagine.
Like, yeah, the Imagine video. Exactly. And
The Boys, they made fun of it in The Boys, dude. She's never recovered.
Like the Cleopatra, like this might be this is gonna be so effed up to say. This could be a career ender. I don't have this as a tier, but
Yeah, not a franchise ender, not only a franchise ender, like a career ender.
Cleopatra, that doesn't look like to be
Snow
coming out.
White,
Snow White, oh right. Oh, I forgot about that.
Evil Queen. She nailed that one line in the trailer though.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, no, I think
That
it's a
might
great pick.
stop people from seeing Snow White. Like Snow White is a lot of things that make people not want to see it. Like Rachel Zegler and her like divisiveness with like the people that are right on the political spectrum.
Yeah,
And then I
the
think
dwarves.
also Gal Gadot in it, and then how they handle the dwarves. Like there's so many bad things going for that movie too. I wonder what the box office will look like.
That's gonna be bad. But this is a great pick. I think I think Joker 2 is so similar to this, but the only difference is even though Joker 2 was nominated for 11 Oscars, I think that movie is just so much more divisive versus Wonder Woman was like everyone thought this movie is awesome. Like, oh, DC got a woman superhero right before Marvel did. You know, Wonder Woman got a movie before Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson. Like, DC did this, and it's getting a sequel before. I guess Captain Marvel was 2 years before, but like wasn't successful. It's like they're gonna keep going on this hot streak, and they didn't, obviously, and it was a disaster. So this is a great pick.
Your fifth rounder, Mr. or Mrs. Irrelevant.
Yeah, if you didn't pick that, I think I was just going to have to do it because it deserves. Wonder Woman 1984 deserves it. But because you did, I'm going away from the superheroes, and like I said a couple times before, I'm going another personal pick. I'm going Oliver Stone's Wall Street. Money Never Sleeps.
On my board.
This movie is expectations were sky high. This is 2010. I am 13 years old. I'm just starting to. I'm like, all right, I want to do something with business in my life, and I've seen Wall Street. I love that movie. Michael Douglas. I knew he got an Academy Award. Great performance. Charlie Sheen. Obviously, like Charlie Sheen's Charlie Sheen. But you know who else is really hot right now? Shia LaBeouf. And he's going to be the lead next to Michael Douglas and Oliver Stone, director coming back here. Josh Brolin, Carey Mulligan. This cast is insane. Frank Langella. Insane cast. Oliver Stone coming back, like I said. And we got what we got. We got what we got. So Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. Like, it was a classic, like, oh, Michael Douglas, he's still, like, relevant. He's still here. And then up and coming, like, who we thought Shia LaBeouf, like, gonna be like the face of Hollywood. Obviously, we know what we just saw in Megalopolis. Like, that comeback story is not happening anytime soon. So I don't know. Wall Street Money Never Sleeps. My last pick.
I had it on my list. Like I said, it's kind of interesting because it's similar to Joker in a way because you have Joaquin returning after winning an Oscar. You know, although it's only like 5 years later. You have Michael Douglas returning as Gordon Gekko for 1987 to 2010. I think you said the movie released. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So he's returning. And the thing is, I feel like after that movie, you knew how it was going to end. Like you just knew like Gordon Gekko's a scumbag. So he's going to be a scumbag. Like we know how this is going to end. And what was interesting, if you go snapshot this in 2010, is Shia LaBeouf. Like Shia LaBeouf is like the next big thing, dude. Like he is like rapidly rising the ranks of young movie stars. Like he was Transformers in 07. He had Disturbia. Now he's in the sequel to Wall Street. Like it's like, holy shit. Like this guy, think of what Charlie Sheen, what Wall Street did for his career. Shia LaBeouf is kind of like a divisive figure, you know. Even back then, he was kind of a bad boy. He's kind of doing the same type of thing. The casting seemed to work out, but the movie was just kind of vanilla, and you just could predict the entire thing. I've not seen it in, I would say, at least 10 years, but I had this definitely on my list because it seems like no one really cares about it. Like it happened, and it just went away like a fart in the wind, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
It has such an iconic poster. It's like Shia LaBeouf sitting in the throne, right? Gordon Gekko with the hand on the shoulder, replaying Wall Street. It's like, dude, that's iconic cinematic shot, right? Or poster. And it's like, damn, this feels special. And it ended up being nothing.
And I think this is at the point where like legacy sequels, of course, were happening. They've always been happening since movies have existed. But it was at the point where like we didn't believe legacy sequels weren't going to work. You know, we saw this cast. We saw Oliver Stone before Oliver Stone is now maybe washed. And again, up and coming actor to go against one of our great actors. It's just like, holy crap. like this movie, and Carey Mulligan, I think she's about to be nominated for an Oscar either the year before or the year, I think actually like the year that year. So it's just like holy, this cast is unbelievable. It's like, oh, of course this is gonna work. Obviously, if this got announced today, I don't know. I'm trying to think like let's just say, for example, this I don't know. I'm trying to think of another example. Like if this Legacy sequel got made 2024 and just forget the ages and like same situation, we'd be like, oh, like I don't know, the expectations would just be so much lower, right? Because we all know how legacy sequels usually go. At this point, 2010, we did not know that. We thought this is going to be fine, and it wasn't.
You know, because I'm thinking about legacy sequels. Like we said before, Top Gun came out in '86. We got that legacy sequel in 2022, right? Top Gun 2022 or
Yeah,
23? 2022. And this one came after with a year later, 87, and we just didn't remember it. Like just it's how hard it is to do, I'm saying. Like you're saying, like if Wall Street sequel came out in 2024, people would be like roll their eyes if they heard that. Like how they're not going to be able to pull this off. Back then, you're right. Like they thought you could execute on this thing. Michael Douglas is young enough. There was some hope to it, you know?
yeah.
And Michael Douglas, I mean, what does he do? Like what what has he played Ben Franklin, I think, recently, last
He did
year or
that
this year?
Illuminati
Oh, he
HBO
did
series,
yeah, Liberace. What was that
Liberace, and
series
then he
called?
obviously was in Ant Man.
Behind the Candelabra
Yes, with Matt
with
Damon,
Damon. Yes. Okay.
and then
Yes,
he
he did.
obviously been in Ant Man.
Oh, right. Yeah, and he
But
knows nothing about that universe.
yeah, and Carey Mulligan, again, 2010 Oscar nominee for an education. So like that was her Oscar nominated year. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's all and Josh Brolin post No Country for Old Men's in this movie. Like
Seems like a great casting,
Susan Sarandon. It's everything you thought. Like it's the perfect mix of like, oh, this is gonna be great. It's just if only we knew legacy sequels don't usually work then.
That's a solid pick, Ricky Flex. Let's go through the draft really quick, and then we'll mention some honorable mentions before we head on out of here. So Dr. O, 4 most disappointing sequels has The Rise of Skywalker, Godfather Part 3, Matrix Resurrections, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Wonder Woman 1984. Ricky Flex has Spider-Man 3, Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, Kingsman The Golden Circle, Glass, and Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps.